Welcome to Sara Gonzales Unfiltered. We've got a vice presidential debate recap to bring you, and I am so excited to bring it to you with my friends. We have Jason Buttrill, chief researcher of the Glenn Beck program. Easy for me to say, and he's actually wearing sleeves today, so I feel very, very grateful.
Right.
Also along for the ride, the much better dressed Dinesh D'Souza. So happy you're here, of course. Filmmaker, author, New York Times bestselling author, actually, with there it is, me. Vindicating Trump by Dinesh D'Souza, which now is a motion picture. I can't wait to talk to you about this, Dinesh, and I'm so happy you're here.
I'm delighted to be here and got all dressed up for the occasion.
Yeah, thank you.
You do this on purpose?
Me too.
I feel like you guys coordinate against me.
No, we just dress like normal professionals.
You're lucky I didn't wear a tie. That would have really made you look bad.
The sad thing is, Dinesh, I don't think he would have felt any shame whatsoever.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
Slobbery is my thing.
Yeah. So I want to get into some of these clips that we have from the, depending on the candidate, the highlights or the lowlights, as it were, depending on how you look at it. But I just want to hear a grade from you guys before we get into the specifics of overall how you felt like both candidates did in this particular debate, Vance and Tim Walz. Dinesh.
My take on Walz is that he tries to convey this warm effervescence. He's over the top. I mean, to a certain sensibility, including mine, there's an element of ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is just, for a 60-year-old, his behavior is a little unbecoming.
Yes.
Wait, it's folksy, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's folksy, it's coachy. I don't know if you saw the video of the guy. There's a mascot approaches him, and this guy goes ape. I mean, he starts doing the victory sign, somersaults, hugs himself. It's a little bit strange. It's strange.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about, the weirdness factor.
Yeah.
Now, J.D. Vance, I think, look, as a guy who went to Dartmouth, he kind of vindicated the Ivy League education, right? Because he came across as very urbane, reserved, thoughtful, to the point. I think he looked really good.
Yeah.
And he made Tim Walz look bad.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
Very non-weird is what he came across, which was their entire attack.
But I was told by the leftist media and Democrats that he was very weird.
Oh, yeah, right. I mean,
extremely weird, Jason.
And if I'm Walz's people, that's what I'm telling him to really bring out. Mm-hmm. Like that's what they should have portrayed J.D. Vance as in that debate to really drive that point home. And he wasn't. He was very likable. I will say that I thought about not even watching this debate. I almost did not do it. And then I realized it's kind of my job to watch it, so I had to. But just my point on that is it's been a long time where I felt comfortable enough in the candidate and knowing that he was going to give a good performance that I didn't even think I'd have to watch. And it's a very similar feeling that I think everyone had, about Barack Obama. You knew he's like, that's what he does. He's very smooth. He can talk well. He's not going to mess up facts and all that stuff. They were just comfortable with it. And it wasn't really until I think Mitt Romney, that first debate where Romney actually beat Obama, and they were like, whoa. And then Obama in the second debate had to really come after him and change it. But I felt very comfortable with him, and that's exactly what we got. Smooth talker. I will go so far as to say that last night probably was very legacy defining for the future of the Republican Party. If that's the future, we're sitting pretty right there.
I think it's important in two fronts. One is, of course, that Trump is up there. He's well into his 70s. And so you cannot help but look beyond Trump. And by look beyond Trump, I mean, we want to preserve the Trumpian spirit, but we're looking to see who embodies that. And I think that looked good for JD. The other thing is it honestly looked good for Trump. Here's why. When Trump picked Pence in 2016, people said, Trump was sure to pick a lackluster guy because Trump is such an alpha male. He doesn't like other people to steal his limelight. He doesn't want to pick anyone even remotely as smart as he is. Well, clearly that's not the case with JD because JD is smart. And Trump does not appear to be in any way upstaged or intimidated by it. So I think it reflects well on the maturity of Trump's judgment that he's very comfortable with and likes JD Vance.
Yeah. Especially knowing that JD Vance was not a never Trumper apparently because he changed his mind, but he did come out publicly against Donald Trump. And usually you don't come back from that.
Right.
Usually you are not given any grace or a second chance. So, I mean, obviously a good pick. I'm sure he's not regretting it after last night. What?
Right. Well, I was going to say that the thing that scares me now about a Trump debate is a thing that I loved about him back in 2015, 2016. Is that he had the ability to go after his opponent. And we hadn't seen that in a while. So he would put them in their place or just throw out a random comment where you're just like, oh, like finally someone said it. We've been looking for that. But then in the last election, it got to the point to where I knew how independents were viewing some of those comments and they were seeing it as, oh, well, he's just being mean. And I felt like especially the first debate that he had against Joe Biden, people thought he was just being too mean. And I knew that tons and tons of independents were like, oh, I don't know. And they were like kind of.
Do you really think they thought that he was being too mean?
I do. Yeah. I just from comments that I saw.
Well, I remember that debate, and I don't think Trump looked good at all. And I think, but it wasn't that he was mean. It was more that he was irritable because he would make these faces and violently shake his head. He appeared to be too contemptuous, too reactive, too irritable, and I think it cost him dearly. I mean, it for sure. Now, he hasn't made those kinds of mistakes. He's a little bit of a different man, I think, now.
Sure.
And in some ways, very clearly for the better. I mean, for example, I think that when Trump came in, he knew that the media is left-wing, academia, Hollywood. I don't think he knew the FBI was left-wing or the CIA or the military. Yeah. I think he thought he could comfortably bring in General Kelly and, military people. Well, you know how they are. They do what they're told. He thought this guy will carry out my instructions, I think he didn't realize the subversion went deep and wide. He didn't expect that Fauci would be lying to him, a guy with a white coat, So I think with Trump, he even though he exposed a lot of the police state, so to speak, he underestimated the depth of it.
How could you not?
How could you not?
Right.
Which we all know now. It's very obvious, but oh my gosh, it's still so unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would imagine 91 indictments later and 2 assassination attempts that just don't quite make a whole lot of sense how they could just be lone gunmen. He's definitely understanding things a little bit more clearly now. So I want to play a couple different clips here. So let's first play JD Vance. Obviously, one of the most important issues that they touched on last night was immigration. And this one was a very interesting one because you had Tim Walz on one side talking about, well, if Donald Trump would have just not told his people to not vote for this border bill that we had, this border bill would have secured everything, which we all know, if you actually look at the text, is a complete lie. It brought more border patrol officials down to the border to act as glorified travel agents. That's what it did. It was not going to actually secure the border. But this was obviously a contemptuous topic. And I want to play JD Vance talking about Kamala Harris's immigration stance. Watch.
First of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding.
I think that JD Vance was very effective at whenever he talked about the border, but it was clear that he was effective when the moderators decided to try to fact check him. Now, even though they said that there would be no real-time fact checking, they decided to try to fact check him about these Haitian immigrants. This is now they want to play semantics about the Haitian immigrants. Oh, well, you're saying that they're illegal, but they're actually not illegal. They're here legally. Yeah, well, that's because your girl let them in under the CBP1 app. And these moderators were not very pleased to hear JD Vance fact check them. Watch.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP1 app where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Thank you, Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP1 app has not been on the books.
And there goes the mic. There goes the mic.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process.
Dinesh, they just had so much they wanted to get to. That's why they cut him off. They just had so much they wanted to get to.
Well, this is the distinctive characteristic of Trump and JD. They have it in common, and that is that they hit back at the media. You know, when I think back to the Reagan years, Reagan would go over the heads of the media. He was sort of above the fray. These guys are in the fray. And I got to say, we like it because, first of all, the press is worse than they were a couple of decades ago. They've gone from bias to naked propaganda. They're open partisans. It's almost like you go to a boxing match and the two referees jump in the ring, put on gloves, and start pummeling one of the fighters. And that's what you saw with Trump and Harris. And there's a version of that happening right here in front of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jason.
To piggyback on what Dinesh just said, I've never seen the media as bad as it is now. And it's saying a lot that they continue to one-up themselves. Almost, it seems like in
the wrong direction.
In the wrong direction. The ABC, I was expecting a lot more from this debate because how can you not do better following up ABC? Mm-hmm. That was absolutely insane. And I fully believe that they had cut some kind of backroom deal with the Harris campaign.
1,000,000%.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
How can you be that blatant just pointing your fact checks on one candidate
right.
and just completely ignoring the other one?
Well, and also, when you go back to Kamala Harris's debate performance, a woman who cannot answer a question to save her life under normal circumstances, all of a sudden had all of these polished answers. And you're like, I wonder if you got these questions in advance. And then, of course, you hear reports, allegations of a whistleblower coming forward and saying, yeah, they fed her the questions. And I'm just saying, I don't know the truth, but all I can say is it would make a whole hell of a lot of sense that now all of a sudden, for the first time in her life, she sounds she sounds polished.
Exactly. She sounded vacant before. She sounded polished for an hour or so, and she's gone back to be completely vacant after. So yes, I think this hypothesis explains what was happening for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing is, it's got to be. I think in the past, what held the media back wasn't that they weren't left wing. It was that they realized that they were being too transparent. People would be like, "Oh my gosh, these guys! Walter Cronkite is completely in with with Kennedy against Nixon." So Cronkite was like, "Oh no, I better sound like I'm right in the middle." The reason these guys don't care about that is that they clearly are paying less attention to what the people think about them and maybe more what their colleagues and bosses think about them. Because in that circle, probably the more left wing you are, the more points you get.
Yeah, that's probably true. Sad to say, but probably true. All right, let's go ahead and let's take a quick break. And then I want to get to a couple more clips here, particularly of Tim Walz and the mainstream media or leftist mainstream media reaction. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Birch Gold. So I don't have to tell you guys that we're living in times of global instability. You're just living it. And if you have not yet looked at diversifying into gold and silver, historically, gold and silver have been a great hedge against inflation. And with Kamala Harris talking about all of these, tax hikes that she's proposing, price controls, all of this, listen, I pray every night that Donald Trump gets into office, but things are not going great. And if Kamala Harris gets into office, things are not going to be any better. So go talk to the folks over at Birch Gold. They've helped my family. They can help you guys. If you have an existing IRA or 401k, they can convert that into an IRA in gold. It's not going to cost you a penny out of pocket. Go text the word Sarah to 989898. They're going to send you a free information kit on gold. There's no obligation. Okay. It's just facts information for you. So there's no reason not to do it. Text the word Sarah to 989898. So prior to the debate last night, there was footage that surfaced of Tim Walz telling people that he was in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre, the protest of spring of 1989. But just recently, we had these photos surface that showed that he was actually in Nebraska at that time, which I'm not really great at geography, but I do know that that is not anywhere close to Hong Kong. And so he had this hanging over his head. This isn't the first time that he's been caught in a lie. He's already been caught in this. Jason, is it stolen valor?
Yes.
Like, that's an accurate characterization. Okay, because you have people on the left who are like, oh, well, that's not technically stolen valor because he did serve. Right, but you can't say that you served in a manner that you didn't to make yourself sound more credible. And so he's already had that lie hanging over his head. He's already had multiple lies that he's been called out on. And you would think that he would have had enough time to come up with some sort of answer, some sort of cover about this Tiananmen Square lie. And instead, this is what happened.
The question was, can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
He just,
painful.
It was an oopsies. It was an oopsies. I said last night when we had the coverage, I'm like, this isn't like, honey, were we at my parents for Christmas last year or your parents for Christmas, right? It's like, were you there during a really important event or not? That was his answer.
Yeah, his misspoke translated mean I made that crap up.
I lied.
Yeah.
Could it be, and this sometimes can happen, I think, is that you have a fiction that dates back now years.
Yeah.
You say it, and at the time, you made it up. But then it becomes part of your shtick. It becomes part of your standard storyline. And you forgot that originally you made it up. And you come to believe you really were there.
Well, damn.
Until somebody looks at some documentary evidence. But even so, look, it wouldn't cost him that much to say, you know what? I've been saying it. And my memory is obviously tracing back to something which is wrong. So he could easily just have leveled. But the thing about these guys, they never do they?
No.
They never level. And so you can tell that what that tells me is that he's chronically dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is just the kind of evasion that he's used to. He probably does this to everybody else and other things where he dodges the issue. And essentially what he always goes back to is, I'm a very good, sincere person. And so my lie doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You hear from him a lot. Like, I was a teacher. I was a coach. I'm just like one of you. I'm America's dad. No.
The other thing about it is I mean, I don't know if I'm being a snob here, but I mean, this is the first guy, I think, who's a teacher who boasts about the fact that he has never sent a kid to an Ivy League school.
Yeah.
He's the kind of the anti-J.D. Vance. Right. And sure enough, he begins with alls. Alls, I want to tell you.
Exactly. Yeah. Look at me. I'm just like one of you. I'm from Minnesota.
But why should these guys be truthful? They can say whatever they want. They're guy
on the
that
left.
if you're from the left, because one of their people, Joe Biden, ascended the highest mountain in politics by making crap up all the time.
Right.
How many times has he been caught in the lie? How many fact checks are out there now that actually call him out there? Who holds him to account for it?
Right.
No one.
Yeah.
No one. You can make that crap up to appear relatable to the people that you're trying to, grift on over. It does not matter. They don't care.
Well, I think there's another important point to this Tim Walz China thing, which is, of course, he really is obsessed with China. And now we have whistleblowers coming out saying, telling the GOP Oversight Committee or the committee chair that DHS knows that he has ties to the CCP. Kind of a big deal. We should probably find out about that. But then, I feel like some of us were sounding the alarm on the current president, or we're told he's the current president, the one making decisions, before he got elected, saying, hey, Jason, how many chalkboard specials did you guys do?
Oh, God, don't remind me.
On Ukraine and China?
4, 5?
And nobody seemed to care. Nobody seems to care about that anymore. And it really does shock me. I understand. Look, I care too about the cost of groceries and the cost of gas and the cost of all of these everyday things and, immigration and all of these other issues that hit home for America. But you're talking about the Chinese Communist Party, which is obviously an enemy of ours. No. It would be a very, very big deal to have someone in office who is in with them, who is in bed with them. And I don't know what to do to instill that sort of urgency in the everyday voter.
The weird thing is, and this may be a reason why people are a little bit less focused on these things, is this. It's become apparent that in the Democratic Party, the person who is the leader is not really the leader. This was not always the case. Obviously, we knew that no one thought of questioning whether even Jimmy Carter was the leader of the Democrats when he was president. And that was obviously true of Clinton and all the way through Obama. But starting with Biden, it looks like the Democrats have gone to a new model. A regime runs the country. In other words, there's an unelected junta of people who are actually making the decisions. They told Joe Biden, you won't have to have a real primary. We're going to move you to the front. And we're going to tell you what to do. You'll be in the canoe, but you're not steering the canoe, right? And apparently there's a little addendum in small print. If we reserve the right to remove you and you have to go willingly, and I bet you that Kamala and Tim Walz are coming in on the same deal. No primary. We're going to move you to the front.
Yeah.
But you are going to take our instructions. You'll say what we tell you to say. And frankly, if we need you to go at some point, you have to go with a smile.
Right.
It's a good point. It's almost like a Politburo system or something like that, where the Politburo has most of the power, and then they need whoever is the most electable to the rest of us idiots or serfs. That's who will establish as the figurehead. It's one of the oddest things. Just to go back to what you were talking about with the whole China thing, the Biden family and all that, that has been one of the most frustrating things in my career, where we presented all the evidence. Multiple other people have as well. But when you look at it and you're like, oh my gosh.
It's right there.
How is he not being charged right now, rated like they rated Mar-a-Lago, with clear corruption charges? It's so black and white, but they did nothing. They did nothing. And you look at the case recently of Eric Adams in New York City. He took a few upgrades in hotels and airlines before he was mayor, right?
Yeah.
But he committed the cardinal sin of talking about immigration.
Exactly right.
And said it'll destroy New York City.
Exactly right.
What a moron, Eric. Just let your son take the bribe. That's all you have to do. And they'll leave you alone. As long as you don't talk about immigration.
Right.
It's a huge difference between the parties. If this were happening on our side, there would be all kinds of conversations about the fact that this was beyond embarrassing and we have to figure out a way to move this guy out, and maybe we can do it with a minimum of scandal. But the Democrats appear, they obviously know everything we know. And evidently, they're quite okay with it.
Yeah. So Tim Walz, let's play two more clips of Tim Walz. Let's play Tim Walz while he was talking about he's pressing for gun control. Okay. And this is just a very odd remark that slipped out of a longer sentence, but we have some questions. Watch.
Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it's only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time.
What? You become friends with school shooters? Okay, so you could say, all right, it was a slip of the tongue. Maybe he meant I've become friends with school shooter victims. I don't know, school shooter survivors. But he was actually asked to clarify this after the debate, and here was that exchange.
Governor, what do you think your strongest moment was tonight? Oh, just I think it was a good debate. The public got to see a contrast.
Okay, so he's answering questions. That's great.
And I think the ending sums it up.
Great.
Democracy issues and
Governor, you said you become friends with school shooters during the debate. Can you clarify what you meant on that?
Governor,
Can you
sir?
clarify what you meant when you said you'd be
Maybe
friends
he
with
just
school
didn't
shooters?
Yes? Hello? Sir?
Why did you say you were in Hong Kong when reports say you weren't?
He suddenly has developed a culinary interest in the ingredients on the pizza. He's fascinated.
Look at that. Oh, look at the cheese on
He's
that
making an
one.
inventory of all the ingredients.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, again, truly, why would you not just be like, I obviously I didn't mean that. I meant something else. Very strange and very telling. Let's play the leftist media reaction really quickly before we have to go to break here. Let's play Rachel Maddow, who, look, you turned on CNN, MSNBC. They were actually complaining. They said Tim Walz didn't have enough practice. They were admitting that Tim Walz did very poorly in this debate.
It was The View.
Right. The View, the polls, most debate viewers, even undecided voters said that J.D. Vance was the clear winner. But Rachel Maddow she can't bring herself to believe that much.
There was one bad moment for Tim Walz in this debate where he got mixed up and embarrassed in answering a question about exactly what month he had been in China in relation to the Tiananmen Square protest. But then on guns, on January 6th, on Obamacare, on the economy, on blaming everything on the border, back again on healthcare, on abortion, on every issue on substance, J.D. Vance was very polished and very slick, and Tim Walz beat him on all the substantive points. At least that was
doesn't even believe
my take on it.
Oh, was that your take, Chris Hayes? I'm sorry, Rachel Maddow. I get them confused. And then one more here, and then I want to get your thoughts before we go to break. Let's go to Politico, who wrote, this is in Politico magazine. Yes, J.D. Vance's beard matters. Vance is the first White House wannabe to wear facial hair in 80 years. Research indicates that voters see beards as more masculine. That can be positive to some, but to others, especially women, it can be negative, conveying aggression and opposition to feminist ideals. That's an evil beard if you listen to Politico. And let's just contrast that with Tim Walz really quickly, okay? Walz's wide eyes showed his passion. You may have thought that it just made him look a little crazy, but it was actually his passion. They said eye-popping can sometimes be a sign of surprise, but for Walz, it simply revealed his emotional intensity, like during an exchange about abortion. The dynamic and emphatic facial motion grabs the viewer's attention. For Walz, it gave extra weight to his feelings and held our gaze. Get out of here.
Well, you can tell that these images don't convey what they say. And the reason is they have to tutor you on what you're seeing. It's almost like if it were really true, because normally, let's say a guy smiles, right? You don't need a headline. His smile conveys affability. Right. You don't need any of that. You need it when you have to coach the person that their natural reaction is not the real one. So they're telling you how to really feel about it.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't blame Rachel Maddow at all. MSNBC is not pretending to be anything that they aren't. There are wolves in an even scarier wolf clothing. They're not trying to come off as, we're just political insiders, delivering the truth to you. Everyone knows there's probably 500 people in the country that were listening to her at that point that were like, yeah, sure, yeah, she nailed it. She got that point. Politico and and people like CNN, they really pissed me off. Politico, the people that started that were Republican opposition reporters. That was their thing. And they kind of slid into, that right when they first created Politico, they slid it into it because that's what they were. They had all these opposition sources within the GOP, and it was easy for them to report on it. They haven't stopped since then. It does not matter. I love, the Washington Post, when they came out after Obama was out and Trump was in, they recommitted themselves. Do y'all remember that? They recommitted themselves to the truth. Democracy dies in darkness now.
Yeah.
So now, we might have been a little bit, off balance. We're recommitting ourselves now, once there's a Republican in the White House, to being fair.
Right.
Even though they were all lapping, they were basically just sucking Ben Rhodes' teat, the entire time. Whatever he said that was the truth. Didn't even bother. But now that is 99% of the media are now all trying to. They have the same ideology as MSNBC, but they're trying to pretend like they are what CNN was originally established to be. They never really were, but now it's just a lot more obvious.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you fix it, the American media at this point. Is it just independent media will do it? Yes. And that is the way forward and everything else?
You have to, in a sense, get people to not only not believe what they're saying, but you're often more accurate in believing the opposite.
Yeah.
So you have to develop a reflex. If they say up, we believe down. And so, because that is the earned distrust. These people have earned our distrust, and in fact, in some cases, just sheer loathing.
Yeah. Which, by the way, here at Blaze TV, we're not. Like, I wore a shirt last night that just said, I'm voting for the guy they keep trying to kill, which you can find at saramerch.com. Yeah, there it is right there. And so I'm like, I'm not pretending to be. Now, I will give you my objective opinion on things. Like last night, I said I thought that Tim Walz I thought that he did better than I thought he was going to, right? Like, I'm not here to just crap all over the other side. I'd like to believe that I give an objective opinion, but I'm not at all afraid to tell you guys where I actually stand and what my opinion is, which I would hope that the viewers respect more than someone pretending like they don't have a bias when you can see very clearly that they do. All right, we've got to take a quick break. And then, Dinesh, I want to talk about your new movie. You're like, I don't know, do you sleep? Anyway, okay, we'll get into that because I want to know. You have so many projects you're working on. But first, we want to thank our sponsor, Jace Medical. So people talk about emergency food all the time, and you should definitely have emergency food. But what people don't always talk about is emergency medication. And I want to ask, are you really prepared if you don't have emergency life-saving medications that you need on hand in the event that some sort of supply chain issue arises? But that would never happen right now. In this day and age, in this country. Yeah, it's not like there's a strike going on right now. We saw with the pandemic, most of our drugs are made in China. And if something happens in China, it can affect life-saving medications for you and your family. So go try the Jace case. It's going to allow you to start stocking up medication. They've got an emergency kit that contains essential antibiotics and medications that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. Very, very easy to go get online. You can add on ivermectin, EpiPens, customize it to your liking over at jace.com. Enter code Sarah at checkout for a discount on your order. That is promo code Sarah, S-A-R-A, at jase.com. All right, Dinesh, tell us about Vindicating Trump, now a major motion picture.
It's in theaters now, and vindicatingtrump.com is the website. So if you plug in your town or city, it'll pop up all the theaters. It's in about 850 theaters. And you have the book, which comes out in a few days. So books and movies are two different things. The book is sort of an argument, makes the case for Trump. Interestingly, Trump doesn't make the case for himself in a way. He puts himself on display. He does the Trumpian shtick. But unlike Reagan, who would say, here's the case for me. Here's the reasons to vote for me. With Trump, you have even Republicans who will say things like, well, I don't like the guy, but I like his policies. You've heard it, they'll say, well, he needs to keep his mouth shut. Or, Dinesh, tell him to stop tweeting and all this kind of stuff. So it's almost like there's on our own side, you've got people who want to remake Trump. They want to rehabilitate him in some way. And the argument I make in the film and in the book is we don't need to remake Trump. Let's actually remake our understanding of Trump, because for this particular crisis that we're facing in the country, it's almost like this guy is tailor-made. He may not be the perfect guy in another time, but at this time, look, what's the supreme political virtue that's needed today? Courage.
Yeah.
Trump has this in spades. And I'm not just talking about his downright outrageous reaction to the two assassination attempts. There's no other living person who would have responded in that way to either of them. But above and beyond that, any other Republican, I think, facing 2 criminal charges, let alone 91, would have exited the field.
You're right.
They would be gone. Trump not only endures, he has this amazing kind of rope-a-dope that he does. He defies gag orders. He ignores the conventional rules, and somehow he forges ahead. I mean, this is a guy who's well suited to taking on the Democrats are a regime, and they have an 800-pound gorilla. Trump is our 800-pound gorilla. Yeah. And that's why I'm really outraged that Republicans go, well, he needs to fight the way we do. And I'm thinking, no, if he fought the way you did, he'd be in the same groveling, miserable position that you're in right now. You're very lucky to have a dude like this on the scene who actually doesn't need it, but has chosen to take on this fight. And he's actually really good at it.
Yeah, yeah. I want to play the, let's go ahead and watch the trailer.
Somebody has to help this country, and if they don't, the country and the world are in big trouble.
Someone's got to overturn the tables in the temple.
Trump jumping into the presidential race.
She's a bit worried.
Of The Apprentice guy?
You know the feeling of power. Could you handle it or would it devour?
They fear that power. You didn't do an insurrection. Had you called for one, there would have been one. And there would be one if you called for one now.
I'm not sure I want that power. I want the power just to make the country better.
America first!
And that scares them.
A lot about Donald Trump scares them.
Let's look at everything. Campaign, his family. Let's get foreign eyes on him.
We have one target. You know who he is.
Going after their companies, their families. That is a dictator.
It's a very dangerous time for our country.
The goal is to put him in jail because they're so afraid of his voice.
I am your voice.
Bury him so deep in legal, it'll bankrupt them.
Broke Donald in jail right before the election.
Sorry for being that guy, but isn't that election interference?
It's not interference if we do it.
We just want a free and fair election.
Sounds expensive.
Ballots ain't cheap.
Wait. Did you actually say the word buy the ballots?
We were able to purchase 10,000 ballots.
That's terrifying.
They cheat in many different ways. That's all they're good at. Ready to save democracy?
We need to stop him permanently.
And that person will be risking his life.
Too bad it's not the 60s, right?
It's the way you survived.
And I said, get me up.
Trump has beaten back every attack against him.
It's like the damn Terminator. We're going to fix our borders, and we're going to fix our elections. We're going to win.
This is my legacy.
I have goosebumps, Dinesh. I picked the right day to wear my fight necklace after watching that. Wow.
Well, you know, in making these films, I've gotten more and more cinematic about it. And this film has a lot of recreations. We have a DNC war room, a media war room. You can get because I think on our side, we think, you know, let's say Trump's in a court and he's being convicted of 34 felonies in Alvin Bragg's courtroom. What happens at CNN? When they watch that, do they say with equanimity, well, we need to cover this tomorrow? Or are they jumping up and high-fiving each other? Jake Tapper, we did it. You did it. Great job, buddy. So what we do is we imaginatively show you what happens behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. So the Trump story is filled out. And that's I think a good documentary film has all the same elements of a good feature film. Yeah. It has character. It has plot. It has suspense. It has climax. It has really good music, which supplies the emotional kind of undertone of the film. And so this is a film that'll have you fired up, cheering, and yet it's packed with information.
Yeah,
I feel like you could make tons of movies on just everything they did to Trump, so going back to 2015, and they would be like, you know, some kind of spy movie or something like that, something crazy on that level. And that's just the Russiagate stuff. Then you could go forward all the way until, you know, 2020 when they start going after these other cases. And that's a completely different movie. That's some kind of like injustice, you know, like some kind of, I don't know. I feel like Tommy Lee Jones would be one of the lawyers or something like that. You know what I mean? It's so thick what they have done over the past.
I mean, what I do to try to bring it all into one tent is I say, look, we're going to deal with character assassination, which becomes political assassination. That's the Russia hoax. Then it's legal assassination or lawfare, which of course comes from warfare. and then finally actual assassination attempts. And all of these are closely connected. The character assassination, the "you're Hitler" circa 1933 supplies the rationale for the actual assassination because it makes the kooks who take up the guns feel like heroes. Oh yeah, we're getting rid of Hitler. So this is all interconnected, and yet somehow Trump has managed to come through it. It's unbelievable.
You mentioned the recreating these scenes where behind the scenes of CNN and how they're actually reacting. But sometimes we get a glimpse of that. Like, I can't remember I think it was The View after Trump took the stage at the RNC, and they were very angry and they made the statement that she humanized him. They were mad that his granddaughter humanized him, a human. And I'm like, I can't believe she's saying this right at what was it, a week after he got shot in the head, and she was mad that his granddaughter humanized him. And I'm like, you guys are not even saying this behind closed doors anymore. You're saying it publicly on air that you're mad that we all know that he is a father and a grandfather and a loved member of his family. You don't want us to know that, and that's really scary.
In this one-on-one with Trump in the film, I realized that there is a private side of Trump that he himself resists putting on public spectacle. He doesn't like to show his feelings. And interestingly, he's different in private. So, for example, he's famously egotistical in public, right? In other words, he loves praise, and he's also over the top, right? His term in office wasn't just great; it was the best term ever. And even the burgers at Mar-a-Lago aren't just good; they're like the best burgers ever made, and so on. So he's over the top. You would expect that in private he might seem insufferable. Not at all. He's self-deprecating. He's easygoing. He shows genuine interest in other people, including people who are beneath him. Guys are the doorman, the waiter. He tries to remember the name of your kid. So I wanted to bring out some of these aspects of Trump that are very endearing, but are not often seen in public. And I think I was able to do it.
Yeah.
Do I have time?
Real quick.
Really quick. My personal Trump story. We went to go shoot an interview. It was a podcast between Glenn and Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He invites Trump and the entire crew, because it was just about time for the dinner for the actual club out there. The entire crew, our cameraman, everyone, to sit at this meal, which is, I don't know how much that would cost, normally, but he pays for the entire group. All brings us at a table, and then if you've ever been there, he's sitting at a table like right in the kind of like in the middle of everything. He just gets up at random, goes over to a table to the most random person, went over to like our table, and just starts talking, just BSing. Wow. Goes over to another table, hey, so approachable. Yeah. Exactly to Dinesh's point, not what you would expect. Yeah, the guy's awesome. Yeah, he's so cool.
People say, because they see it. The Trump's a bully. Well. He'll take on the media. He will take on powerful people, Merrick Garland and so on. Trump will never bully a doorman. He'll never bully a cab driver. He'll never bully. Recently, Tim Walz gave the middle finger to some guy on the street. Trump will never do that. Right. So Trump, in that sense, is gracious to people who are in a way of humbler circumstances than he is. So that's a virtue on the part of Trump.
He's the guy that stands in between that bully and the doorman.
Yeah,
exactly who he is.
Give the website one more time, Dinesh.
It's vindicatingtrump.com, and you can also pre-order the book on the site. You can get it obviously from Amazon and stuff. But the movie's in theaters. The movie I make them for the theater, so you'll be able to see it later on your computer or it's streaming. But see it in the theater if you can. Vindicatingtrump.com.
Sweet. And we will be right back. Well, Doug Emhoff, of course, the second gentleman, is in the headlines in the news for all the wrong reasons. He is now being accused of slapping his ex-girlfriend, who is not coming forward with her name this time, but apparently she is a successful New York attorney, and 3 of her friends have confirmed the story, which is in 2012, they were in France attending an event at the Cannes Film Festival, and he allegedly got very angry that he said she was flirting with a valet worker at a gala, and this is what the friends say. He struck her in the face so hard that she spun around and she went to her car and immediately called her friends. Now, I would just like to say it is interesting. It's very fascinating because the left is now portraying him as this new breed of masculinity. Did you know that? Time magazine said.
It's called femininity, I believe.
Right. Yeah. It's called not masculine at all. And so it'll be interesting to see how the left twists this, because they say they are the party of women and they care about women. And, they are, of course, the Me Too party and all of these things. They want to say that what is a woman? They can't say. But it'll be interesting I'm sure that they'll just sweep it under the rug. But I don't know. I didn't think he had it in him. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, he's redefining. I mean, no, he's public enemy number one of toxic masculinity, redefining masculinity, and impregnating nannies.
Oh my gosh, you're right. I didn't even think about that aspect.
It's like, wait a minute.
I didn't even think about that aspect.
It's exactly opposite of what they say he is.
And isn't it so weird that he's friends with his ex-wife that he did that to? She's like, she loves him. Like, that's very strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, what the left does, and this is their standard move, is they start with a caricature definition of masculinity. So true masculinity, of course, is the quiet guy who is faithful to his wife and supports his family, and is there for them when they need him, and is not necessarily a superhero of any kind, or not necessarily somebody who is, taken mixed martial arts. But what they do is they'll define masculinity that way. Then they flip to the opposite of it, which is, basically some guy in a skirt, or some guy who's like, his wife is always right. And then they go, that's the new masculinity. Whereas the truth of it is both these extremes are somewhat ridiculous. Yeah. And the truth of it is real masculinity is being the true partner that your spouse is looking for.
Right. Yeah, I know I talked about this a lot with our mutual friend, Chad Prather, and he's like, well, masculinity inherently is not toxic, and toxicity is not inherently masculine. So like these two things, if you are truly masculine, you can't be toxic. And if you're toxic, then you're doing it wrong, basically. I would say that slapping your girlfriend and impregnating your nanny while you're married is doing it wrong.
Yeah,
say that.
That's toxic douchebaggery. And he's got that in spades. To me, true masculinity has always just been the protector, has been the rock and the protector, of your family and of your friends and all of that. It's never been about the loud, boisterous, like aggressive,
bearded.
Thug.
Aggressively bearded?
Oh, yeah, aggressively
bearded.
Yeah.
Like JD Vance.
It's okay to be aggressively bearded if you just, show your passion like this. It looks like a deer in the headlights, actually.
It did. Well, but he isn't bearded, which is fine. He doesn't have to be bearded, but it is very, there's such a stark contrast. I know we got to take a break here. There's such a stark contrast between the two men, leaders, just born leaders running on the Republican side. And then you have Doug Emhoff married to Kamala and Tim Walz, who's like dancing around with jazz hands everywhere he goes. So I'm just saying, look at the difference. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Well, Dinesh, we appreciate you being here with us so much. Jason, thanks for wearing sleeves, I guess. But make sure that you go check out where the movie is and pre-order the book over at vindicatingtrump.com. We've got like 20 seconds left here, and I am going to ask you the question that I did ask you before that I didn't get an answer to. Do you sleep?
Yes, I do. We hatch these ideas months in advance. In fact, we shot a lot of the recreations.
8 seconds.
But then we got Trump right at the very end. Fortunately, we got him after the assassination attempts.